Hi everyone, thank you for coming for this presentation. Today we'll be talking about the African renewable energy in the production of electricity and how analytics could potentially change the energy market of Africa and the world. So this presentation is solely presented for shareholders and investors of outside of Africa in order to bring their interest in the potential marketplace for energy expansion. Please stay tuned. My name is Lemma. So to begin with the presentation, I would like to present the outline of the presentation. I'll start with the introduction, head on to the energy resource in Africa, the different pathways to the resource in different sections of the continent of Africa, specifically focusing on renewable energy. And then I'll talk about the smart and integrated energy infrastructure that Africa is trying to hold right now and the future of the African energy market. And finally, I'll conclude with how analytics is changing the energy business currently and progressively in the future. Before we get into the energy portion of this presentation, I would like to present this part for investors and stakeholders to kind of clear the vision about Africa. Africa today is the world's second largest and second populous continent with 54 countries and a total GDP of 3.3 trillion. The population today has 1.2 billion amount of people. The African economy has shown to grow with unprecedented amount in the past years. The growth has averaged about 5% for over a decade, making Africa the fastest growing continent in the entire world. The African Union forecasts this economic growth to increase by 7% per year on average from 2015 to 2030. So when it comes to energy, in 2011, 46 African countries, including 25 energy ministers, adopted renewable energy as the prominent energy resource for accelerating Africa's growth as a continent. So to talk about the different energy resources in Africa, let's classify it traditionally as the fossil fuel and renewable. For fossil fuel, as you can see in this picture, the western side of Africa, which is countries like Nigeria and Angola, has the largest production in oil and gas. When it comes to gas and oil, the recent discoveries took about 30% of the world's oil discoveries in sub-Saharan Africa, that is in countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Sudan, Mozambique, and Tanzania. Now let's talk about renewable energy and the potential energy market in Africa. The equator cuts through the African continent right in the middle, making the continent the closest to the sun, giving it a high exposure to solar energy. Solar energy is an untapped energy potential of the renewable resources in Africa. To give an idea on the potential of the wind energy, most of the hurricanes and the tsunamis that start with the high winds at sub-Saharan highlands, which makes it the highest potential for wind energy. Hydroelectric energy is also one of the biggest supplier of electricity and energy supply, and in the last 7 years has grown unprecedentedly within the continent. So let's now look how these different energy sources generate power and their capacities within the continent of Africa. In 2012, generation capacity for 90 gigawatts was seen from 22% alone from renewables. The rest was fossil fuel, nuclear, and coal. When it comes to 2040 forecast, it is supposed to grow to 380 gigawatts, making bioenergy, geothermal, solar, wind to grow to 20%, hydroelectric to go to 24%, making it more than half of the energy account for renewables to generate electricity. So another factor why renewable energy is an important resource for Africa is the energy demand in Africa. As you can see in this graph, it shows that the combined effort of traditional energy from fossil fuel, gas, oil, and coal only supply less than 50%, if not less than 20% in most countries. So the rest energy gap has to be accompanied by a new resource of renewables like bioenergy, hydroelectric, solar, wind in general. Now that we have seen renewable energy as a prominent resource of energy within the continent of Africa, let's see how the different sections, the east, the west, the central, and the southern, resourced itself in the power generation program from 2000 to 2040. In the West, it can be seen predominantly that coal and the production of fossil fuels will resource the power generation. When it comes to the East, currently right now, there is more renewable energy resources, and it will continue to be so by 2040. In the South, the majority energy comes from coal production, and in the Central, hydroelectric energy is prominently growing, and it will continue to do so by 2040. So it is safe to say that with the increase of demand of energy and population, Africa is going to be the next big renewable energy market. So how come an investor enters this market early on? Well, there are different venues. The first is the smart and integrated energy systems like mini-grid and off-grid. Currently, solar and hydro accounts for 2/3 of electricity production using mini-grid and off-grid systems. Solar industry startups and entrepreneurs are launching different businesses in Africa for using algorithms, machine learning and sensors to drive their businesses. With off-grid and mid-grid systems to lower the cost of energy that competes with fossil fuel, it opens up new markets in the technology. Different investment venues are being opened right now to supply a huge demand in electricity. Additional investment of $14.5 billion is needed yearly up to 2030. So this is because electricity access is given more predominantly by off-grid and mini-grid systems than on-grid. So innovation companies and technology companies have a high shot in entering this growing market at an early stage. Let's now look at a mini case study on the country of Ethiopia, my country, on how they are planning to expand their electricity production. There is an optimal split by grid type in Ethiopia between on-grid, off-grid, and mini-grid. The solid line shows that the existing lines today, and the dotted line shows that the planned lines in the future. Off-grid solutions play an important role in Ethiopia's smart energy infrastructure. To understand the future of global energy, let's look at this picture. So from 2010 to 2016, it was shown that renewables, solar PV, wind, and other renewables has added more capacity in the global energy market than coal, gas, and nuclear. But it's also expected from 2017 to 2040 that renewables would quadruple, and giving the highest addition of global energy supply that would match the demand of the world. This means that Africa will also play a big role in the supply of energy globally. Now that we've seen renewable energy plays a big role in the energy market globally and in Africa, let's see how the governments of these countries in Africa are playing a role in opening up the market for international investors like you. So an additional $450 billion investment is being opened for power sector alone. This should reduce power outage by half and achieve universal electricity across urban areas. Another way to reform this governance is deeper regional and international cooperation and integration between countries within the continent of Africa and also outside investors like China, US, Europe, and India. Another one which is very integral to the growth of Africa is better management of resources and revenues check. This is by adopting robust and transparent processes that would make businesses effective to use oil and gas revenues to help support the renewables. So what I would like to say at the very end is it's safe to say that renewables will change the energy market in Africa. Now, investors like you, how can they play a role in entering this market? Well, it can be seen that the off-grid and on-grid systems allows the accumulation of operational data from solar panels and wind channels that could potentially change the energy systems using analytics. For example, IBM research on solar and wind forecasting technology said that it is able to predict solar and wind conditions from 15 minutes to 30 days in advance. This is using machine learning and artificial intelligence. This will totally change growth in renewable energy using analytics for better efficiencies. For example, Africa also by 2030 says that they have identified modern renewable technology to increase by 22%. So there is an open market that would allow a cost of reduction for the people and a huge investment opportunity for investors like you. Thank you for listening. I hope this will compel you to become an investor in the biggest energy expansion program in Africa.